Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
And a very good morning to you. Welcome to Newsline, broadcasting live as always from the Newsfirst studios in Dawson Street in Colombo. And this morning, of course, we have woken to the sad news that a legendary entertainer, Sam the Man, has finally called it a day and passed away whilst actually on duty at the hotel where he made his mark in Mount Lavinia. And there was a small clip from the huge repertoire that Sam the Man gave Sri Lanka wonderful, wonderful, enduring memories. He was a legendary entertainer, and he was an even greater entertainer, a lover of all things wonderful. And we like to acknowledge Sam the Man's immense contribution to entertainment in Sri Lanka. And back to some serious business. The Inland Revenue Act has caused some consternation among stakeholders and others in the industry. And to discuss that very aspect, this morning we are joined by a partner from Gajman Co, Mr. Gajendran. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
And thank you very much for being on Newsline.
Pleasure to be with you.
And tell me, as a professional, why, in your opinion, do we need a new Inland Revenue Act? We have one. It seems to work. Why can't it merely be amended and carry on?
The way I understand, Farooq, it's the government pronounced that they want to introduce new legislation for exchange control, customs, and I believe for Inland Revenue Act. Though our law is about over 70 years old, but it has got amended over a period of time. This is a fresh look altogether at the Inland Revenue Act, and it's definitely a paradigm shift from what we have and what has been proposed.
I see. So would you say it's sort of about time? Is it necessary?
No, it has been felt by the government. I think many professionals would have thought that we had a good system of law. We had a history of income tax law.
Yeah.
Some may have thought the administration may have not kept pace to that.
Yeah.
But the law per se had some significant features.
Right.
And whether we could have amended the law. But that's not the way forward as it is. It is a completely new law altogether. And the structure and the basic concepts also completely new. Under the existing law, we followed generally the principle-based law. You know, that is the British tradition. But under the proposed one, we are moving towards more towards a rule-based law.
Right.
So under the rule-based law, what happens is the rules are specified, and if you don't come into that, then it doesn't apply.
So if you don't fit into
that. For example, even some basic words like payment, received, have been defined.
Right.
So when you look at those definitions, some of the things which may not generally come under the connotation of the English meaning of payment is included. Similarly, if something is not included in the payment definition, even if it is a payment, it can be excluded.
I see.
So it's a new learning process. So that is the element of uncertainty that is being brought in, and that is what people are generally apprehensive of.
And I was speaking to some people, they told me that there's an element of authoritarianism creeping in to government in Sri Lanka. Sorry, and they point out to this business where if they are assessed, under the new rules there is no apparently there is no right of challenge. Is that true?
No, not really. There is always a right of challenge. Only thing, when you speak of assessments under the existing Inland Revenue Act, there are only one assessment and additional assessments.
Right.
But under the proposed one, there seems to be multiple assessments. You have self-assessment, that is what you send in. There is advanced assessment. There are default assessments. There are amended assessment, additional assessments, further assessments. So it looks complicated.
Yes, I was about to say, isn't that a bit
it looks complicated. So it's a process. It's going to be a learning process for everyone.
Right.
And what does this mean? What is the terminology? What is the meanings given to these various forms of assessments? Will evolve over a period of time. Right. And as you know, the Inland Revenue Act, like any tax statute, is always dynamic. You know, every year there will be amendments coming in.
Right.
So just because this has been pronounced now, before legislation changes could take place, ideally it should take place. And thereafter also on a yearly basis, certainly with the budgets, amendments and improvements and refinements will have to take place.
Do we know who the government has consulted in drafting this new?
The understanding is the government invited the IMF to help them with this new law, and the IMF assisted the government on their invitation. And there was an agreement, I believe, with the government for this new law, and that is the way it's being
do you think it was inextricably linked to the funding that was given to us?
No, it's like with any lending or institution. If there is an agreement, and if this is part of the agreement, I believe it must be part of the agreement. I am not privy to the agreement the government has had with the IMF, and if it is part of the agreements, then those what you have agreed with the lending institution has to be complied with.
Right.
That's in any lending agreement you will have certain conditions.
I mean, this is, you're taking the impact is not just on one or two people. This impact, it's a national impact.
Yeah. So the IMF would have given their thoughts. The whole purpose is for simplifying and modernizing. That's what it's being told, and bringing about transparency.
Right.
And they may have invoked learning from other countries, and they are saying this is a modern form of law. And if when the legislation is made, the sovereignty of the country is recognized. They recognize, they might give something, but when the legislation is made, the parliament can make its own changes. If there is intervention by judiciary because people have gone to courts on questions of constitutionality, and if the courts makes a decision, those things will get incorporated. And I don't think any lending institution will be unsavory for that type of the sovereignty of the country. It's left to the lawmakers how they want to implement.
So not only accountants, but lawyers are also going to be rather busy in the months.
Yeah, when something is new, and there is uncertainty, particularly the Department of Inland Revenue may have not been involved in the drafting of the legislation, which is a good thing. Generally, it's a good thing because that is administration, and the policy has to be drafted by the policy makers.
Right.
But in the past, the revenue was invited in the drafting of the legislation. So when that happens, the policy, what has been pronounced may not be given effect to. In strictest term, the policy making should be with the policy makers, and the legislation drafting should be under their purview. The administrations and the consultants and the taxpayers should be invited to make their intervention.
Now I'm told that this new proposed act, this bill, it's a carbon copy of what has been used in Ghana.
Yeah, if you see the internet of Ghana, you can download the Inland Revenue Act of Ghana. To my view, this law is substantially based on Ghana.
Right. Replete with the two spelling mistakes. I don't know if you spotted that.
You cannot belittle the whole process in that sense.
No, not at all. But it's something to note.
Yeah,
they've undoubtedly spent. We would assume millions, because that's what everything is in government these days. So we presume that when you spent millions, you can have and demand and expect and have a legitimate expectation of originality. If you were to photocopy all your assessments on your pronouncements and then send it along to your several clients, there's no originality then.
You have a point. You have a point on that. But what has happened is our law is based on the Ghanaian law, but there are improvements or adjustment made to domesticate the law.
Right.
It is there. It is if you see, it is not a carbon copy.
Right.
But it could have started as a carbon copy. But then with that amendments should come. Whether that is good enough or not is another debate.
Right.
Whether that's another good enough or not, that's another debate. Because there are salient and sacrosanct features in our existing law which we don't see. Particularly for the protection of the taxpayer.
Right.
Certainty of certain matters. It is not there. So it doesn't mean this what you are getting is not good or bad, but we will have to see how it's going to
But the
progress.
question then is that what about the better parts of the laws that we already had?
Yeah, certainly. Now there are certain features like when an assessor makes an assessment, you have to give reasons for not accepting the return.
Right.
If I mean that is fundamental requirement. We don't see that requirement here. So you can have arbitrary, capricious, excessive assessments, and the assessor need not give reasons why he is making the assessment. And
but that opens the door to a lot of abuse.
Certainly it can. Certainly it can. I believe when these things are pointed out, it will get corrected at some point or other. But it is the case. I mean, there is a presumption that in good order and good governance, the assessor will automatically give the reason. It didn't happen. In this country, we had a provision earlier to make assessment without giving reasons. In 1978, we brought in that provision, and that is well settled in law. There are other features like, under the existing law, you have two identified revenue officers, the assessor and the Commissioner General.
Right.
There are functions the assessor can perform, which can be taken over by the Commissioner General if the need arises. But the functions of the Commissioner General, the assessor is a subordinate officer, cannot perform. And the functions of the Commissioner General can be performed only by another revenue officer who has the status of the Commissioner General.
Right.
But under the new law, there is only a Commissioner General. So he becomes the assessor, assessing, and if there is an appeal, it's also go to him. And under the proposed law, the Commissioner General can delegate his functions to any revenue officer. So it doesn't mean it has to be the same status. If he chooses to give it to someone down the line, you can do so. So these things
sounds a bit authoritarian.
No, the quality standards can come because can be questioned. So these things we will have to see whether there was a clear power to assess earlier was the assessor.
Right.
The Commissioner General only in exceptional situation takes over the power of assessment, but the power to assess is with the assessor because he is the file officer. Now the Commissioner General, then there will be assessors, and even if the revenue officers are not been defined now in this law, they should be defined in line with the service minutes of the government. So these are things that will have to get refined, otherwise we will have another order. And how that evolves is to be seen, because some of these things will be challenged in courts and things like that when it takes place.
Yes, I was trying to come to that actually, because there is a sense of creeping authoritarianism here. Now, this country and its leaders were accused of that very growing authoritarianism, but in a different context in the last government, when the United Nations themselves said that there was a sense of that they were worried about the growing authoritarianism. And in a different context, I see that happening in Sri Lanka today. In the current situation, we have several various institutions supposed to be investigating corruption, and then the cause of that, they say, is because there were so many complaints. There's a deluge of complaints. Okay, then we see so almost sort of arbitrary decisions where they dismiss the customs fines and so on, and then they're getting on with it. And it all seems to be at almost the whim and fancy of one particular minister or group of officials. And so when we are presented with this all singing, largely untested farce, then it appears that this is also another example of the will of the legislators being imposed on the people without proper consultation.
Now, if you see what has happened in this country, there is a transition in our democracy.
But Mr. Kachinjan, with all due respect, we've been independent since 1948.
Yeah, but yes, if you see, I believe there is too much freedom now. People say anything and everything without getting their facts in order, and nothing happens. That situation was not there few months ago, and what is happening now is also can be viewed as disruption. So many protests and things like that. People who are protesting,
that's the flip side.
Yeah, they don't know that. But I don't think in the legislative process, if the earlier the executive president could have done anything he wanted. But I don't think now that's going to be, the parliament is going to be responsible. But if there is authority, and in the case of the Inland Revenue Act, it doesn't be, everything doesn't end with the Commissioner General. If you don't agree with him, you appeal, and if he doesn't hold in your favor, you go to the Tax Appeals Commission. And from the Tax Appeals Commission, you can go to the courts on questions of law. But what is happening is certain things are, whether your right to be heard is being diluted or subjugated. It can, because my point is an appeal or an administrative review, now they are given only 30 days, 90 days. Under the current law, we have about 2 years, 1.5 years, 2 years, 1.5 years. Now, within 90 days, you cannot look into an appeal, and the decisions will not be made. So what will happen is all these appeal will be pushed up to the Tax Appeals Commission. Then you need an army of people there to resolve this, and you don't need so many revenue officers. So now, it's earlier to make an assessment, you had to do it within 2 years. Now it's 4 years. So, sometimes we are getting mixed up. To make an assessment 4 years, to settle an appeal is 90 days. So still 4 years. So if you could have made it 2 years and 2 years, like now. So those improvements have to be discussed and debated, to know why this change from here to here is inexplicable sometimes.
And I detect a similar sort of thing happening. We had the anti-corruption investigation unit, and they were supposed to be some sort of filter to send files off to the different other agencies like the FCID. So they investigate, and then all of a sudden you have this decision, the stock exchange matters, we'll be sending it to the SEC, national procurement complaints and investigations, we'll be sending it to the National Procurement Commission. And so then you're left wondering why they've spent so much of money, the public's money, on creating an FCID, because it appears that the FCID is now left with in essence, political files. So, do you see
basically, in the situation that you have been mentioning, there is a discretionary power given to the ministers or the people in power. But under the Inland Revenue Act, the intervention of the ministers and politicians are not there in the administration of the law. So the law has to be implemented as it is. So there the variations to the methodology of doing things cannot be done on a discretionary basis. The law specifies. But what has been specified, whether it needs improvement, is of course definitely another matter.
When I see the same sort of synergy, if you like, wrong word, but the same sort of thing. When the media starts getting activated, as we have now been, we as a network have never been bothered about the sort of threats and so on of the past, and we've been through the mill. We've been stoned, we've been bombed, we've been accused of being terrorists, and amongst other things, but never been accused of being successful at what we do. Once in a way, it might be a good idea to acknowledge that. But leave that aside. When the media as a whole, when we expose fraud and so on, then all of a sudden you get these discretionary powers or statutory powers or legislative powers coming into play, and they tend to want to block the media. There's this new media standards bill that's being put forward, and some of those features are absolutely draconian. So my point is that when you take it as a whole, not just only one item like the Inland Revenue Act or the Media Standards Bill, or when you take it as a whole, you get this feeling that authoritarianism is creeping up rather slowly but surely, and it is coming after you. And so you do wonder what it is, what this openness that we all sort of hoped for since 2015.
I believe we are in a state of flux because of the transition.
Right.
And that is the reason multiple people have multiple impressions on this.
Right.
But I wouldn't think the way it is proceeding, one person in the government, discretions can be questioned, and that also can be questioned.
Yeah.
But the fear of extreme authoritarianism, I believe we don't have that. I don't need to go into the past, but whether we are going in that same direction or we are going further away, even trying to improve on the wrong lines of the past, that is questionable. So I don't think the way, because the point, what has happened now is even in the public sector, the government servants, to my mind, now if they are being told, right, you make the decisions, you have the power, I'm not going to tell you, you make the decisions, I believe they have forgotten how to make decisions.
Well, they would have, because...
And also, there is a feeling, which is a dangerous feeling, if you make a decision, and it can be questioned. Right?
And you might end up at the FCI.
Exactly. So that is the challenge. And they feel it is better not to make a decision.
Yes.
And if they make a decision, someone will complain, earlier they were protected, or that nothing happens. Even if they make a mess of it, nothing happens.
Which
is something that in the maturing process of a democracy, we have to deal with this. Because, and take for example, a government servant does a job sincerely, then he is questioned by the body, what you are mentioning, or any other body. What happens is he has to spend his own money to defend himself. He doesn't have that.
I'm sorry to drag in the bond here. unlike in the bond investigation, where one deputy governor of the central bank, it'd be very interesting for the bribery commissioner to look into how he can afford to pay those legal bills and as to who is actually paying his bills. That's a point for the bribery commissioner to do, and please be proactive. Don't wait till we come and complain. Sorry to interject, but you know that's what's happening here. You make a very valid point.
Yeah.
You know, we have a case in the Bank of Ceylon where they've lost somebody's money to Nigerian fraudsters, and instead of settling this customer, they've ended up in court. And if you look at the names mentioned of the lawyers representing, and you can just imagine the amount of fees that are being basically wasted for what? If they've lost the money, you have a duty of care to pay the money back. Pay it and get on with it. Instead, this thing will go on and on and on, and the lawyers enriching themselves.
Yeah, there is always many sides to a story.
Of course.
But my point is simple. If this country is to grow, the public sector has to rise to the occasion, because the implementation of many programs and the laws are with the public sector. And what happens is we don't have the proper civil service what we had many years ago. If you see India, the bureaucracy is very strong. Bureaucracy is very strong. You can't just here what happens when the minister moves, the secretary moves, everyone moves, whole thing goes off, and
everyone including
so
the team.
Whether we have the fit and proper person, whether they are competent to deal with these issues is a question. And then when people who are competent and capable make their decisions, still you can question them, but then it goes too much into, where they are reluctant to make. That is the greatest challenge we have in the public sector, and that has to be resolved and put right if we want to grow.
We have two statements, if you like. One says the same way that civil servants have to be protected, the media too has to be protected, as many journalists and media houses have been attacked in the past. And the other one says that why media standards when standards are deteriorating in Parliament. So you do see continuous anomalies, and it's sad that every person and every institution, they have their duties and obligations, and they have rights and protection. Both should go hand in glove. You cannot have only the rights without the duties and obligation, and there must be standard and guidance of ethics and governance. That is fundamentally important. So it's even in the Inland Revenue Act, the revenue taxpayer has his duties and obligations, but he has his rights and protection. But my point is, under the new act, the rights and protection is not as strong and good as under the and proposed that they got 4 years to come back at you.
Yeah, which is not definitely not a progressive step.
It's completely regressive.
Yeah, so it's so it has happened. So it will be debated why did you make? We had 4 years, 5 years, made it 3 years, 2 years, 1.5 years. Then we went for 2 years.
Yeah.
And then you had time to settle. There was no limit to settle an appeal. Then they made it 2 years, they made it 3 years, then made it 2 years, they made it 1.5 years. So that was a good mix. You can't, the assessor to make, and you can't force the taxpayer to go with that settlement. So 90 days is totally inadequate. 4 years is too much.
Thank you. Last and final question. Do you find us doing wrong when we expose frauds and corruption?
No, it's like this. You can expose what has happened.
Yeah.
But what happened at a particular event, place, or this thing, that has to be investigated and found out. Right. Sometimes I feel with every respect, the media is doing exemplary service, whether we are in a kangaroo court. You know what I mean. Because
we understand the
before facts are found,
yes,
and the law is implemented and fixed, no one cannot be found to be a criminal till he is convicted.
That's right. That's why we say we report and you decide.
Yeah.
And that's been our motto. That's been the motto of the shareholders of this company, this group, and long be greater strength to them, because if as journalists, if our publishers don't have and don't display strength of character and purpose of mind to continue with this true medium of freedom of speech, then journalists will not be able to function.
Very true, very true. Journalists should be protected. At the same time, they also should be guided to have ethics in their conduct.
Finally, I'll leave you with the thought that today we have the Presidential Commission of Inquiry into the issuance of bonds, thanks in large part to the work that the media did.
You can take credit for that.
We do. Our Newsfirst led the way, and we're very happy at the progress. Mr. Gajendran, thank you so much for being on News.
Thank you. Pleasure.
We really do appreciate that. And we want to just assure you that whatever frauds we have exposed and are continuing to expose, we have all the documentation with us. Without that, it doesn't even come into the newsroom.
Oh, really?
And that's
reassuring.
Absolutely. Our chairman and his team will not tolerate anything less. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we look forward to seeing you on our network again. And that's about it. Sorry about the overrun, but important matters. So on the 13th of July, Thursday, 2017, that's it from Newsline. Take care. God bless.
Good.